All right, thank you for your patience, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Megan Kites. I'm an operations manager here at iLife. With me today, you'll see a few other faces on your screens. We have Matt Burns, he's our training coordinator, Colin LaValle, who is our quality manager, and then Dylan Bernard, who is our communication and design coordinator. We have others out in the group here, but those will be the four that you interact with today. And then again, my name is Megan and I'm an operations manager. And then we are here to present today on the 2025 Participant Hired Worker Timesheet Training and what that means to all of you. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will be starting today with a presentation, so please hold your questions until the end. And a recording of this webinar will be found at ilife.org in the in and out timesheet section, and you'll see that link there on your screen. A quick overview, this presentation provides important information and step-by-step instructions for completing the IRIS Participant Hired Worker in and out timesheet. In this presentation, we'll cover the steps needed to make sure you're filling in and submitting your timesheet correctly. It's important to remember that participant hired workers in the IRIS program need to submit a timesheet in order to receive payment. And now workers will need to take a few additional steps to mark the start and end times of each service performed during their shift. Let's talk about the when and the why of the timesheet change. So when did this timesheet format take effect? It started as of August 11th, 2024. The Department of Health Services, or DHS, has required that the IRIS program use the new in and out timesheet format for participant hired workers. And why did this timesheet change? The change was made to help ensure more accurate time reporting and to improve program integrity. So again, that date, as of August 11th, 2024, the use of this format is required and has been required to receive payment in the IRIS program. So taking a look at the timesheet at a glance, so before we get started, this is a refresher on what this new format looks like, and then we'll take the time to go through each section in greater detail on the following slides. So I'll just give you folks a moment here to take a look at it before changing over. All right, so the in and out timesheet format is made up of 4 different primary sections. The first is the worker and participant information. The second is the timekeeping section, so that big middle part of the timesheet. Section 3 is the time totals. And then finally, section 4 are the signatures of both the participant and the participant hired worker. So let's talk about completing the timesheet. Step 1, you're going to enter your identifying information. So on line 1, this is where your participant hired worker number goes. This is the number that comes on your new hire paperwork when you're first converted, and it comes on the check stubs and everything that you currently get in the mail. So that enters on line 1, and then line 2, you'll enter your name as it appears on your IRIS paperwork. So if your name you've noticed is incorrect, or if there's a misspelling, or perhaps you've been married or divorced recently and your name needs to be changed, we can help change that. You don't have to just continue submitting the timesheet as it is with the wrong information or any misspelling. So please let us know if that is incorrect. But you will put your name on line 2. And then line 3 is for your participant's full name. And then finally, the pay period ending date and the month, date, year format. And as a note, you can refer to the IRIS payment payroll schedule for those pay period end dates. And it actually does come printed on the back of the timesheets that you currently get in the mail. So if you do have any questions, just flip that over and you can see what date is appropriate. Next, we're going to enter the service information. So for each service performed, you will enter the date worked in the month date format on line A. Line B, you're going to include the start time of the service you're performing. So in this example, let me grab my laser pointer here. You'll see that they have 10 o'clock entered. Line C is for either the AM or PM box of that time, that's your start time. Section D is for the end time. Section E is either the AM or PM checkbox for when that service ended. Section F is the total hours worked. So in this case, the person worked from 10 o'clock to 12:15, which is 2.25 hours. And then finally, in Section G, you'll enter your service code. In this case, the person worked supportive home care, so they've entered SHC. So now we're going to take a look at an example. We have John, the participant hired worker. So he worked on January 13th. So he enters 1/13 as his date worked. He worked from 10 o'clock a.m. So he'll write 10 o'clock as his start time and check the a.m. box. He worked until 12:15 p.m. So he'll enter 12:15 as his end time and check the p.m. box. This was a total of 2.25 hours, so he enters that in his hours worked column. And then finally, like I mentioned, this was him providing supportive home care, so he enters SHC as the service code in box G at the end. So if we continue John's day, he worked from 10 o'clock to 12:15, which we just mentioned. After taking a break for lunch, John worked from 1:15 p.m. So again, we're on the same day. So he's going to enter 1:13 as his date worked. He worked from 1:15 p.m. So he enters 1:15 and checks the p.m. box. He worked until 1:45 p.m., so he enters 1:45 as his end time and checks the p.m. box. This was a total of a half hour, so he enters 0.50 in his hours worked, and then he performed personal care for the participant during this time, so he enters PC as his service code. Then, after running a quick personal errand, John returned from 2:15 p.m. until 3:15 p.m. So again, we're on the same day. He's going to stay with the 1:13 as his date worked. It was from 2:15 p.m., so he enters 2:15 and marks the p.m. box. He worked until 3:15 p.m., so again he enters 3:15 as his end time and marks the p.m. box. This was a total of 1 hour, so he enters 1 as his hours worked, and he performed personal care for this participant once again, so he's going to enter PC on that last line. As a note, each line must be filled in with the full information for each service. Do not use an arrow to indicate repeated services. This may result in a delay of payment or possible denial of payment. So if we look at the example, PC for personal care is entered each time it was performed. So on that shift we just mentioned, even though it was close to the same time, he does enter them separately, and he does enter all of the information all the way across, and doesn't use any ditto marks or arrows or anything like that. Each line is completed fully. So this is an example of what one of those complete boxes might look like as far as all of the start and end times listed. Again, each column is filled in completely, and you can clearly see the check marks and everything for each AM and PM box. So next we will calculate totals. This is optional. So when iLife processes timesheets, we do look at that box I just showed to you. So we're looking at that timekeeping section, but for your own information, you can certainly use the totals box at the top right of the timesheet. So if you do choose to fill in the totals, you'll calculate the total hours by service code for each week. So looking at your full timesheet, how many hours for SHC or PC or CC, and in this case, John did not have any hours for CC, so he left this blank. And then he looks at his second week and sees that he had 6.75 hours of SHC, 3 hours of PC, and then 8 hours of CC. So after doing that math and separating those weeks out, John then totals his hours by week. So all of his services added together for the first week are 18.75 hours. And then all of his hours added together for the second week total 17.75 hours. And again, I just want to emphasize that this is an optional section. You do not need to use it because we do look at that middle timekeeping section and those start and end times that you've listed down in the middle of the timesheet. Next, the participant hired worker signs and dates the form, and then the participant or guardian reviews the hours for accuracy, and then they sign and date the forms themselves. So it's talking about submitting your timesheet and how to do that. We do have several options, some of which you might use already, some you may not know of yet, but we do have a paperless option. We have an online portal that takes a lot of the complication of the new timesheet out of it just makes it easier for you if you would prefer to submit on our portal. You can sign up by calling our customer service team at 1-888-800-5599 or by using the live chat option found on our website at www.ilife.org. You would just need an email address and a smart device that can connect to the internet, so like a computer, tablet, or smartphone. And then both participant hired workers and participants must have access and their own email address to use that. And then again, if you have any questions about the schedule, as far as due dates and pay dates, that can be found on our website or on the back of the timesheet for your reference. So there are other ways to submit your timesheet aside from the portal. We do have a fax line at 414-937-2034. You can email your timesheets to iris.timereports@ilife.org. They can be mailed to iLife at P.O. Box 80439 in Milwaukee, the zip code 53208. Or if you're in the Milwaukee area, you can drop them off at our drop box, which is at our 2020 West Wells location on the far side of the parking lot. Some important information to know when submitting your timesheets. Each timesheet should be between one participant and one participant hired worker. Enter the dates of service with the correct pay period end dates. So again, if you do need that payroll schedule, it's either on the back of the timesheet or can be found at the link you see on your screen. Please keep dates in order if possible and only submit one pay period per timesheet. As a note for participants, for each participant for whom you work in the 2-week pay period, submit a timesheet showing each service provided to that participant. So essentially what that means is if you work for 2 people, turn in 2 separate timesheets. If you work for 5 people, turn in 5 separate timesheets. Each timesheet should be between you and that one participant, not multiple participants. And then finally, double check that you've entered the correct participant name, participant hired worker name, and participant hired worker number. In and out timesheets are required for all PHWs, both live-in and non-live-in caregivers. And as a reminder, electronic visit verification, or EVV, is still required for non-live-in caregivers providing either supportive home care, SHC, or personal care, which is PC. And don't forget, timesheets need to be submitted in addition to EVV for those non-live-in caregiving individuals. So if you are a live-in caregiver, you are exempt from EVV. If you are a non-live-in caregiver, you are not exempt. So that means that you will need to submit both EVV and this new timesheet if you aren't already. So enter separate lines for different services. As an example, you would have PC on one line and SHC on a separate line. Enter the start and end times for each service provided. If you are providing overnight services, you must split up the hours between the 2 dates. So as an example, personal care services were worked from Tuesday 9:26 at 10 p.m. to Wednesday 9:27 at 5 a.m. You would enter those times over 2 dates. As you can see on that first line, we have the 9:26 start date starting at 10 o'clock p.m. until 12 o'clock a.m., which is the end of 9:26. So it's a total of 2 hours of PC. And then you start on 9:27 at 12 a.m. until 5 a.m., which is a total of 5 hours of PC. So again, even though it's one shift overnight, you're breaking it down by the specific date on your timesheet. Start and end time should be entered at the closest 15-minute mark. As an example, 12:07 p.m. would be rounded down to 12, which is noon. 12:08 would be rounded up to 12:15. 12:22 is rounded down to 12:15. 12:23 should be rounded up to 12:30. 12:37 would be rounded down to 12:30. 12:38 would be rounded up to 12:45. 12:52 would be rounded down to 12:45. And then finally 12:53 would be rounded up to 1 o'clock. And then all entries must include an AM or PM. And then please note that 12 o'clock PM is noon and 12 o'clock AM is midnight. Total hours worked should be entered in quarter-hour increments. So as an example, 15 minutes would be written on the timesheet as 0.25, 30 minutes would be 0.5, and then 45 minutes is entered on the timesheet as 0.75. So your total hours for each week should be added correctly and separated by service code. And again, that top right section with those totals, that is for reference only, and we'll calculate the payment based on the daily in and out entries listed in the tables with the start and end times. The signature dates must be on or after the last date of service for them to be valid. And please complete a second in and out timesheet if you have more times than will fit on a single sheet. You can submit them together at the end of the pay period. And then if you are submitting multiple timesheets for one pay period, please fill out all the fields, including signatures and signature dates. And if possible, add a note on the timesheet to state page 1 of 2, 2 of 2, or simply multiple pages would work as well. A few friendly reminders. Each pay period begins on the listed Sunday at 12 o'clock a.m. and ends 2 weeks later on the listed Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Timesheets may be submitted from the last day worked to the due date, and due dates are listed on the back of the timesheets as I've mentioned before. The due date is the Friday after the previous pay period ends. And again, please make sure the timesheet is complete and correct before submitting it to iLife. So ensure all of your AMs and PMs are marked, that all of your dates are listed, that you have the month and the date, and just all of those boxes for each line are checked. And timesheets received after the scheduled due date are subject to be processed on a later payment date. Have some additional resources listed here. If you need additional instructional materials or assistance, you can visit our website at the link you see on your screen. You can email our customer service agents at iris@ilife.org. Visit our website at ilife.org and use our live chat feature, or you can call our customer service team at 888-800-5599 to speak with a live agent.